Hello, everyone. Welcome to the FZY Israel Tour Parents Evening. Hopefully, everyone can hear me. And what we're going to do is we're going to just wait a couple of minutes just for a couple more last people to come on onto the YouTube channel, and then we're going to get going. So if just a couple of housekeeping things whilst we wait. If people have questions throughout the evening, if you place it in the chat, we will be monitoring that, and we will try and answer as many of questions as we possibly can throughout the evening, throughout the presentation we'll be giving, and also at the end. And I want to apologize in advance that my camera on my computer, as you can probably see, is switching itself off intermittently. So apologies for that. So we'll just wait one more minute to see if there are a few more people going to join, and then we're going to get going. Okay, do you know what? I think we're 4 minutes past now, so I think people who want to join hopefully are already here, and if not, people will join a little bit later. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to try and share my screen now so we can bring up a presentation, and then we will get going. So is my screen being shared? No, 1 second, apologies. Okay, so let me say a big welcome to everybody. My name is Joel. I'm the Executive Director of FZY. I have been working for FZY for about 18, 19 years now, at first in the UK and more recently in Israel, where I made Aliyah about 14 years ago. I want to also introduce other people who are here and the partners of FZY on the Israel Tour program, who are here on the call. So from Tzlalim, who is the organization that we work with, who build our logistics and build the program on the ground in Israel, we have Aaron, who's joining us from Tzlalim. From UJ Israel Experience, who help us with a lot of the background work and setting things up, and we'll talk about a little bit more about that shortly, is Josh Dubell. And from FZY specifically, aside from myself, as I said, Joel, who's the Executive Director, we have here on the call Ruth, who's FZY's Program Enrollment Manager. We have Claire, who's FZY's Office Manager. We have Nathan, who is FZY's Mazkir. And we have Ron, who is FZY's Israel Tour Coordinator. And as I said, as we go throughout the proceeding, what we'll do, people when they come to speak, will also say a few words about themselves and the organization they work for. What I'd like to do now, though, is I'm going to hand over the first part of the evening to Nathan, FZY's Mazkir, who can share with us a little bit about FZY.
Thanks, Joel. Yep, as Joel said, I'm Nathan. I'm the current Mazkir of FZY. And yeah, I want to start by just kind of introducing what FZY is, for those of you who don't know. So FZY is the oldest and largest pluralist Zionist Jewish youth movement in the UK. We were founded 112 years ago in 1910. And over the past 30, 40 years or so, we've taken 10,000 teenagers to Israel on Israel Tour programs. Obviously, we run other programs as well, but Israel Tour is definitely our biggest. And yeah, so what I'd like to talk about really is how FZY how this is FZY Israel Tour rather than just any Israel Tour. So the FZY element really comes into our ideology, which is focused around pluralism and Zionism. So when it comes to pluralism on FZY, we do this in a few ways. So firstly, we won't tell your children what to believe. We want to present them with a wide range of views and opinions, both in terms of politics, where we might bring external organizations to talk about different views on Israel, but also in terms of religiously. And when it comes to Shabbat, that's when it's most clear. So in terms of kind of Judaism and Shabbat on FZY, all of our food is certified kosher. And in Shabbat, in public places, we expect our chanachim, our participants, to keep Shabbat when they're in public, to be respectful of other people's religious observance. And we offer different services. So on Friday night and Saturday morning, we offer 3 different Shabbat services for an Orthodox service, a Reform service, and an alternative, a form of alternative service. So that there is a different range of kind of religious observance there, and for all of our participants to be able to both experience what they're comfortable with and maybe explore something that they're not so comfortable with.
Okay, thank you, Nathan, for sharing that. What I'm going to do now, I'm actually going to pass this on to Aaron from Tlalim, who's going to say a little bit about the program itself.
Okay, hi everyone. Tlalim is a large tour provider. We work with the Tlalim Group, is a group of companies who we're the largest provider of birthright groups. We work with groups from all over the world. My particular company's focus is on youth groups, so that's kind of where the connection to FZY comes in. What we try to do when we're building the programs, and we did this very closely with FZY already last year, unfortunately the program didn't go ahead, but we've been working for a very long time to perfect the program. In the short time that we have in this 3-week period to try and experience Israel, both geographically, but also, you know, the people of Israel, and to experience and to use Israel as a canvas for education, not just to tour Israel in the way that you might when you're on holiday with your family, but to really give that additional aspect where it ties into the educational values of FZY. So here you'll see some of the values. Also with regards to safety and security, I'm gonna, maybe Joel will talk more about welfare and communication, but in terms of safety and security, we work with the Ministry of Education and Ministry of Tourism's Cheder Matzav situation room, where we take their advice. They receive the schedules of each group, each day what they're doing, and we take their advice and follow their guidelines regarding security requirements for various sites, as well as medical provision and safety guidelines. These are some of the places that we will be visiting. You'll see in the next slide more of a detailed kind of weekly review of what the kind of sites are that we visit, but we try to give a rounded experience, both in terms of, obviously it's a fun program and the participants are coming to have fun, but our aim is to educate them, you know, sometimes by mistake. You know, they'll come to have fun, they'll do all these attractions and sites, and they'll come out at the end having undergone an educational experience, maybe without even knowing it. Yeah, the Maccabees one is the central day, which will be happening on the 27th of July, where that's the only day of the program where all 10 groups of FZY come together next to the Kinneret for a mixture of sports competitions and various other competitions, where up until the Maccabea, they are preparing for it, spending evenings making sure that that the Madrachim are getting them into the spirit of the Maccabea, and then really spending that day competing with the other groups, but also having fun, and at the end, hopefully winning as well. This is what I referred to a little earlier, which was the more detailed schedule. This is just a couple of weeks, but and just an example of one group's program, but they stay in a mixture of youth hostels and hotels. There are 2 nights which are represented here, which are more outside of youth hostels and hotels. One which is here, it says Kfar Nokdim, which is a Bedouin encampment where they stay in Bedouin tents. And also there's this on the Sunday 17th of July, this night under the stars, where we call it a desert experience, but it's managed by a company that that takes care of it. They provide all the food, all the equipment that they need to stay there. And we try to like empower the participants as much as possible to run that experience themselves and to have, you know, be involved in the cooking of the dinner and things like that. But at the end of the day, there's a company who takes care of it, and no one will be going hungry. Yeah. Cool.
Thank you, Aaron. Yeah, just want to say, like, hopefully you'll see it. Everyone will be sent their schedules hopefully by the end of this week. So you'll be able to dive into exactly the full itinerary that everyone will be doing. But as Aaron said, everyone is doing a very similar thing. Here's just a sample 2 weeks of a schedule and really covering like the full length and breadth of the country. What I want to do now is actually pass us on to Josh from UJ Israel Experience to share with us a few things that they, UJ Israel Experience, are a little bit more closely involved in. So Josh.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. I'm Josh. Firstly, I wanted to say thank you to everybody on this call. Thank you for signing up for Israel Tour. It's, I believe, going to be, I think, one of the best years yet. For many reasons. We've been itching to go back to Israel for so many years, 2.5 years. And now we have the opportunity to do it. And we believe in a really, really safe and secure way. We wouldn't do it otherwise. And I think that you have made an absolutely incredible decision picking FZY. They are the best at what they do when it comes to Israel tours. And we are so proud to work with them as part of this network, and in addition to Tlalim, who I will heap some praise on in a few minutes. So I'm going to talk about a few pieces that we work together with FZY and Tlalim on. But in general, who are UJ Israel Experience? So we are a part of the Jewish Agency for Israel and supported by UJA. And our job is to inspire and educate and connect young people to Israel and Judaism through an educational journey. And we do this through myriad of programs. We support FZY's year course program as well, and our long-term programs, so post-university internship type stuff. So we support birthright programs, Onward Israel, 2-month summer internships, but the jewel in the crown is Israel Tour. That is the flagship. Everybody knows it. That is the program, the rite of passage in the Jewish community. And for many people over the years, thousands upon thousands, FZY has been that rite of passage, and they are one of the best at doing it. But a little bit about the network. So there are 12 Jewish youth movements and organizations that are going to be going on Israel Tour this year. And we are so delighted that we opened this out to 17-year-olds, year 11s this year. And it's something that there was a lot of discussion about, but it was absolutely the right thing to do, especially for those of you that missed out last year. But a little bit about what we do, and I'll go into specific details in the next few slides about, in particular, for the things below. We provide a robust Madrachim training alongside all of the great training that FZY do. Not that they need it, because they're all fantastic already, but this is an added layer of training for the Madrachim. We organize all the flights, and later on, so past my bit of the presentation, I'll talk a little bit more about flights. As you know, we support alongside FZY with bursaries, and we support with program planning and educational consultancy, but also communications plans and protocols. And this year we have 1,300 participants on Israel Tour. And in a normal year, we have around 55% of each of the cohort that goes on Israel Tour. We're so proud of it. And now Tlalim, you've heard from Aaron a minute ago, but they are, I think he undersold himself. They are absolutely brilliant at what they do. You are all in safe hands, sending your team on FZY Israel Tour this year with Tlalim. They run so many tours in the summer, and they were doing stuff during the pandemic as well, like during the height of the pandemic. So they are extra qualified this year to navigate your team through Israel. And we did a tendering process for all of the tour providers that we work with, and they passed on every level. And I know Aaron mentioned a bit about what they do, but that also, I'm going to go a bit further, itinerary logistics, accommodation, security, staff, And most importantly, they make sure that your teen is fed. We know in Israel, it's very important, you know, with all the moving around, that they keep nourished. Yeah, they're brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And a little bit about what we do in terms of training. Both FZY and UJA have all screened and interviewed each of the British Madrachim. It was a robust process. We got into every nook and cranny. We also did a UK seminar in April that gave them some key training, some brushing up on some training. And just in about 2 weeks, we're going to be heading to Israel to do an Israel seminar with all of the youth movements, and FZY along the way actually do their own training as well that is FZY specific. And at the end of the seminar, they're taking everybody away for a Shabbat to really prepare. So, and those are the areas that we do training on, and FZY do training on. It's a process that lasts 6 to 7 months. And we're right in the heart of it as well. So you're also in safe hands. And I'm going to move on now to talking a little bit about the structure. So you can see at the top, we work together with FZY and Tlalim. And Tlalim have Rakazim, organizers on the ground, that work with about 4 or 5 groups. And they're the ones in the car driving around, making sure that everybody feels supported in every moment of, emergency or not, or slightly less emergency reasons. They make sure that people get to the hospital and all of this type of stuff. And the Rakazim also deal directly with the security when it's necessary, the Israeli Madrachim and the British Madrachim. And also you can see the British Madrachim get support. And the reason I say this is I'm not expecting you to go, into the summer knowing all of these terms and where the arrows go. It's more to say that your teen, your child is really well supported. There is a vast infrastructure behind Israel Tour that will support your child, so you don't have to fret. But going to the Kotel is really, really transformative. Going to the Negev, having the desert experience, hiking, doing all that type of stuff is important. But our number one priority is security. Aaron touched upon it before, and a lot of the work that he does on the ground is relating to security. And I want to nail it down and say it again, because we're kind of repeating ourselves, but I'm going to explain a little bit more about what it is that every day it's a constant holistic assessment. So whether it's if you wake up and it's 40 degrees at midday on a hike, that could be considered a security concern, or a tree has fallen down on one of the major roads to get to one of the sites. And obviously also in times of heightened tension, as we know, security, that might be the obvious one that you think about, that all of this stuff is constantly monitored. And I'm going to talk a bit about the Cheder Matzav, the situation room, because it's connected to the IDF and the Israeli police force, and all organized tours in Israel are plugged into this network. Schools, other tourism trips, all of the birthright trips are all plugged into it. And before even your teen has woken up in the morning, as Aaron said, that they have been through every single bit of the tochnet, of the schedule, and they'll adapt things. And I should say that all of the tours are GPS tracked. So whether they're on a little hike and it's moving a little bit slowly as a dot, or they're on a bus going from Haifa to Tel Aviv, they're always tracked. So we know where all of the tours are at any given moment. And you will also have security guards during parts of the trip, and that will be defined as when the Cheder Matzav, the Moked Teva, will say that one is needed. Yeah. Great. Well, not great, it's COVID-19. But I'm going to talk about COVID-19. And obviously, this has been a guide. We've been constantly looking at the rules and laws of both the British and Israeli governments throughout this process. And actually, that's the reason why we believe that Israel Tour wasn't able to happen for the previous 2 years. And we really, really do believe there is now. And we've based our guidelines as they are today. They may change. As we know, we could be surprised. Many things can happen. As you know, we've all lived through it. So as of May the 20th, you do not need to take a fit to fly PCR test or a PCR test at Ben Gurion Airport. If a participant tests positive before departure date, we hope that they'll be able to join later. And then participants who subsequently test negative and complete the required isolation will be able to join tour later at the discretion of FZY, and it will be at your own cost, although it may be possible to claim it back via the insurance policy, and you can speak to FZY about that. I'm going to go to Joel for a second. I don't know if you want to give any additional information about the pre-tour testing and the requirements for that.
Yeah, so one thing that we're asking all families to do is we're asking that, apologies, my videos keep cutting off, but to ask all families that within the 24 hours before coming, that we ask them that they take a lateral flow test. There's several reasons for that. One is that in Israel, you have to quarantine by law. And if you came out with COVID-19, it was very unlikely that quarantine period will be covered on insurance or anything like that. So we want to avoid any situations where any participant in the first few days has COVID-19 because they came with COVID-19. And so we were asking everyone to go through that process and take a lateral flow test, a rapid test at home. And if anyone tests positive, then to be in touch with us and let us know that. And we'll work through that process, as Josh mentioned before, in terms of the insurance and getting you to come out later. It will be better for everyone, should that be the case. Back to Josh.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the few requirements that happens is that you have to fill out a passenger locator form before you leave for tour. And this it's on the Israeli, the Ministry of, I forgot the name, that's good for head. It's on the website, which we will send out the link for. And it's a short process. One word of warning is that there is a section about your vaccination status. You currently do not need to be vaccinated in order to enter Israel. And the reason that this was put in was to give you the green pass, but in Israel, they're not even, it's not even a thing anymore to be getting the green pass. So put it in, but do not be concerned or worried when you fill it out. So just moving on to, and as we said before, currently, anyone testing positive for COVID-19 in Israel needs to isolate for a minimum of 5 days. The next one. And any participant testing positive will be sent in a car and a taxi with a background check driver and one of the madrachim in the front with the windows open. And they will stay in a secured facility that Tlalim have for the duration of the summer. And while the participant cannot be in physical contact with other people, the organizers of Israel Tour will ensure that there's a minimum of 2 leaders there and access to a medical professional. And also they'll get, foods and access, and, obviously if there's an emergency, they'll be able to be supported in that process. And we will make every effort that they can rejoin the program as soon as regulations allow. And if the isolation extends beyond the final date of the program, us and Tlalim will work together, and FZY will work together to make sure that you're placed on the first available flight after isolation, and we'll continue the same level of support throughout. And the last one I'm going to mention, which is absolutely, it's very much a worst case scenario, and the more the days go on, the more unlikely this is because it happened a little bit earlier, like quite a bit earlier in the year, towards the end of last year, that if Israel Tour is cancelled at this stage due to changed travel regulations in UK or Israel, including vaccination requirements, then we will work as hard work to achieve as high a refund as possible based on all of our various contracts in the various areas. And we'll only provide a refund for the maximum amount we can recoup, less a COVID administration fee, which is outlined in your important information booklet that you can read, which is, because it's almost unknown as to some of the costs that might be incurred through, this type of stuff. So keep moving. But what I will say, and this is, I think, my main point with regards to COVID-19, is that things can change. The guidelines may become more or less strict, but we will always do what is best for the participants and for the families, and for you as the families. It's difficult, sometimes it's messy, but we will do what we can. We're in a good position right now. This is I would say the closer that we get to tour, the more clear things are going to be. And you may read things in the news, and you may read things everywhere that that maybe they're going to stop isolation in Israel, but we are going with what is the law today. But these things can change in a moment's notice. We know how Israel is sometimes. Great, moving on. A bit about communication. I know Nathan is going to talk a little bit further about FZY communication in a minute. You will receive a daily email from FZY coming at different times of the day, because we know what tours like. It's a lot happening. So whether you get it at 1 p.m. or you get it at 5:30 p.m., don't fret. FZY, we've all seen their social media. There will absolutely be social media uploads, and you'll be able to see all the smiling faces and fun stuff and be jealous of what they're doing. And the last part is in the moments of emergencies. So we have a robust text messaging service, if necessary, to text every single participant on Israel Tour and all of the 12 youth organizations. We have a trained call center that can call every single family very quickly in our offices. And we also have a timestamp website where you can log on to it at any time of the day and see the tour's status overall. And finally, I'm not going to talk too much about bursaries because that process has come and gone. It's officially closed. However, I just want to touch upon the last point. We know that we're living in a time at the moment where prices are rising. We're not in as good a financial situation as we were. There's lots happening in the world. So if your situation has changed since the end of the bursary application process, please get in contact with FZY and we'll work together to do what we can in those situations. We still stand by that financial circumstances shouldn't be a barrier to attendance on Israel Tour. So if your situation has changed, please contact us. And finally, I just want to say, I hope you have an amazing summer, either living vicariously through your teen, and also maybe getting away yourself, perhaps. And thank you so much. And I really hope you have a good evening, good summer, and thank you.
Thank you, Josh, for that. What we're going to do, I'm going to carry on with some of the other points now. I want to take off from where Josh was about how do FZY actually care for the teams, for the participants who are on the program. So one of the things we do is we set a curfew. And we do that because the days are really packed. We really want to get a lot into the days. And in order to do that in a safe, and we want the participants to get it as much out of the days as possible. We don't want them to be up all night. And then when we're visiting Yad Vashem or we're going on a hike and seeing amazing things and learning about the history and the culture and everything that Israel has to provide, that they're half asleep and not there, or they're on a hike and they're so tired, they're not, looking where they're going and can hurt themselves. So one of the things we do is we set a curfew. We recognize the participants coming generally are around 16 years old. So, we're not sending them to bed early, and the curfew will vary from night to night, depending on exactly where they are and what their next day's activities are. But that's one of the things that we do because we want to make sure that, the teens have, enough sleep so they're not going to get themselves ill and they can really take advantage of the program. Clothing requirements we have and you hopefully would have seen in the information guide that we sent out earlier this week, a kit list, but we have there are certain times and certain activities that there are certain clothing requirements. Israel is hot in the summer. It can easily reach mid-30s, 40 degrees even sometimes in the heat of the day in certain parts of Israel, and so there are certain regulations around clothing in terms of when they're outside during the day. Hat needs to be worn. Also, sun cream needs to be applied. Water needs to be drunk. Closed shoes needs to be worn on hikes so they can't be stubbing their toes and hurting themselves in that way. So there are certain clothing requirements and certain things that we put, that we ask, and that's all included within the kit list, within the types of clothes and the types of things that we'll ask participants to bring out with them, so they have the appropriate things with them, so we can look after them on the ground. All of the tour groups have a first aid trained staff member with them in the entirety of the time. So there's always someone there who has the right qualifications and experience to be able to look after when if any incident arises at any time. But we have through the both through our insurance, both through our partners with Slalim and their contacts and everything. You know, there are doctors, clinics, hospitals, experts, medical experts throughout the country, pretty much wherever they'll be. And when there's a need for, you know, a participant to see someone more than a first aider who is with the group the entire time, then we will set that up. We will, you know, a madrich will always accompany participants to any of these places. They won't ever be going there alone and left to deal with the system themselves. So always one of the staff will go with them, and we'll ensure that they're getting the, you know, the right treatment and the right medical care that they need. We provide obviously health insurance on the program. Again, more details of that was put into the information guide that you also you received earlier this week. But most health incidents, most health things which come up from a medical thing are covered. There are some things which aren't, which is outlined in that guide. Certain things like pre-existing conditions and certain things like that, or like that are not covered or not fully covered to the same way, and things around pregnancy and alcohol and other things which shouldn't be really happening and being there on Israel Tour anyway. But it's important that, like, you know, as parents, you do double check what is covered and what isn't covered, and if there are certain things that you feel is important, that your child or ward may have a pre-existing condition, and you feel you want a slightly different cover or to cover extra, then make sure you understand what is covered, so that you know what you may want to extend on. In terms of medication is handed to the staff at the start of the program, and is kept with the staff for the entirety of the time. It's done that so number one, that there's less chance. I'm sure that all of the teens who are coming are very sensible, but where we want to make sure that nothing gets left behind in a hostel when we move from one place to another. So the staff will keep hold of all of that. There is exceptions in terms of like EpiPens and inhaler, where people will be bringing like 3 of those, and 1 will stay with the participant in case for the emergencies, and we'll be keeping those extra ones there. So we'll be keeping the medication there, and make sure, and the participants will come to the staff once a day, twice a day, 3 times a day, and whenever it is that they're meant to take their medication, and we'll take their day's medication there. In addition to that, like there's a welfare support team in Israel. Both the UJA and Salalim FZY have taken out contracts with different social workers and mental health experts there, who are there to both provide support to our staff, and advice and support to our madrachim and our rakazim, the people who will be working with your teens during the summer, and if there's a need also to speak to the participants themselves, if that's a need at a specific point. Moving on, I really do apologize for my video. When do we contact you? Should there be situations arising in terms of your child, as there's a medical situation has arisen? So in terms of non-emergency cases, we will send you an email. We will send that information to you in an email. It will either be on the day of that situation have happened, or the day after, depending on what time of the day it occurs in Israel, and things like that. We will try. It's always our goal to try and send you on the day itself. But obviously, if something happens at 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the evening in Israel, it may those things may come through the next day. So anything which is non-emergency, we will send you a short email telling you your son and daughter they were feeling a little unwell, and we gave them paracetamol, or they went to see a check-in with a doctor, whatever that may be the case. In situations where there is an emergency, we will contact you as parents immediately to update you what's going on, and we will keep you updated as any emergency situation progresses. And as we said, as I mentioned before, we're in the situation where at all times, participants are not left on their own. There are always staff there who will be supporting them, and both them and their friends and their peers throughout the program. I want to say a few words about discipline and our code of conduct. So within the application process, within the information booklet that you've all read and signed to adhere to with your child as well, there's a code of conduct within that which outlines the rules of the program. I think it's important to say that these rules are put in place. Like, we don't just kind of like sit there and think what would be what rules should we have there. Like, the rules are all put in place for reasons of safety, security, and welfare of the participants. We put things in place to be able to keep people safe, so we can run a program which will be as beneficial as possible to everyone, with no one feeling like they are put in a position where they're in an uncomfortable place, where they feel intimidated, where they're unsafe, etc. So it's really important that participants they, as I said, both you as parents and participants have already seen these and have already agreed to adhere to those. It will be something that we'll be reminding the participants of in the first few hours of their arrival to Israel. So there should be no reason why participants are unaware what the rules of the program are. And one of the things that we ask and we request of you as parents is to help enforce the standard of behavior that we're all looking for in the program, because if that happens, then we'll have a really fantastic summer ahead, with everyone really getting on well together with very few issues. Should there be some disciplinary issues that arise throughout the summer, there is a disciplinary ladder that we work with. The first stage of that disciplinary ladder will be the madrachim, the group madrachim of the participant. They will sit with the participant and explain what they've done wrong, and will give what we call as a sevet warning, which is kind of like your first strike. At that point, you for a sevet warning, like, you will be notified via email. You'll get an email through from the FZY office explaining, like, this is what this is what happened, and because of that, like, we felt it was necessary to provide a sevet warning for that. If there was further breaking of the rules, and we felt like we're reaching a stage where that participant is making it hard for us to be able to run a program and make a safe space for everyone there will be a rakaz warning. We mentioned, I think Josh mentioned before, the rakazim are those people who are like above the group madrachim, the coordinators who are helping run the program. They will have a meeting with the rakaz, and the rakaz will outline what the issues and what happened and what went wrong, and we'll give them a rakaz warning. At this point, you'll be notified via telephone and with a follow-up email afterwards, explaining again the issues, what happened, and why your son or daughter may have been placed on a rakaz warning. Should there be even further repeated incidents, at that point, we will remove the participant from the group. They'll be taken through to the head offices of Tlalim, FZY, in the center of the country, and they'll meet with one of the senior staff of the program, and will likely be sent home from the program at that stage. Obviously, again, at that point, at that stage as well, we will obviously be notifying you by telephone as well. A couple of things which are important to say on this. Number one, the steps can be skipped. There are, we don't always go from one to the next to the other. There are certain things which we feel are just, we can't keep people on our program because it's just not safe for them, or it's not safe for other people. So there may be certain times when we will skip steps, including, sending someone home immediately if that is felt what needs to happen. But we will try and do as much as we can to both, it really is our goal, so that every participant that starts the program finishes the program and has a really positive experience. And we will work with both the participants themselves and with you if there are points where we're finding that a challenge to achieve, so that hopefully we can together we can reach that goal. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to stop talking for a few minutes. I'm going to pass over to Nathan, who can share a little bit more about communication.
Great. Thanks, Joel. So yes, communication on Israel Tour. So some of this has already been mentioned, and I'll be recapping, and some of this I'll be explaining how we'll be keeping in touch with you and how you can contact our office during the summer as well. So email updates we'll be sending out every day except for Shabbat, so Sunday to Friday. And as Josh said earlier, that may vary in time, but there will be an email update every day. And within that update, there'll be some information on what your child has been up to during the day. Hopefully there'll be some maybe a couple of quotes, and there'll be a link to somewhere where you can find photos that have been taken during the program over which will be updated every day. So more photos will be added each day. And then by the end of the program, you'll have a lovely album to look back over. So during the summer, our office will be open from 8:30 through to 6:30 during the week. So if you want to contact us, you'll be able to phone, and within our office, we'll have around 6 staff who you'll be able to speak to, and we'll be kind of managing our program from here. And then outside of those office hours, there will be an emergency contact phone number. So closer to the time, we'll be sending you this phone number. It will also be on our answer phone message during the summer. And if there is an emergency outside of our office hours, that will be the phone number for you to use. I do want to stress that the number is for emergencies, and if your phone call isn't an emergency, we will likely hang up so we can keep the line free. What I'd also like to say is that if you do have some questions and you feel they aren't urgent, you are also very welcome to email us during the summer, and we will be giving you information on who to email as well closer to the time. And like I said, we have this team of 6 staff in our office, and that means you won't be speaking directly to your children's madrachim. So we want our madrachim to be fully focused on leading the program, and we have a very robust system of communication between the office and between them. So when it does come to you wanting to get messages across, you won't be able to speak directly with your children's madrachim. So it is very much, we want this communication through the office, and that also goes both ways. So something to stress to your children as well is, if they have problems, they should tell their madrachim. Telling their parents is great, but it won't help them really. You're going to be probably a couple of thousand miles away, and their madrachim are there with them and are there to care for them. So if their madrachim don't know things, it is important that they're told, rather than going through a whole process of them telling you telling us, and then us getting in touch with madrachim. And so that is something that it is important to keep in mind during the summer as well. And yeah, so this was something that we sent out during in the information pack earlier this week. There was a page on an organization called the Sue Harris Trust. So we have a partnership with this organization who will be visiting every tour group during the summer, and they run specifically a database, so a register for bone marrow transplants, so through Anthony Nolan. But this is specifically focused on the Jewish community because someone who needs a bone marrow transplant who is Jewish is much more likely to find a match with another Jewish person. And we have this partnership with them, and it is completely voluntary. There is full information in the information guide on how this works, but anyone who is over the age of 16 or over is able to consent and voluntarily join the register. And this is something that we want to give the opportunity for our participants to do, because we do think it is something that is really an amazing opportunity. There is a chance that they could save someone's life. And actually, someone who signed up to this register through FZY Israel Tour in 2019 recently donated their bone, not bone marrow, but their stem cells through a blood transfusion and actually saved someone's life. So it is a really great opportunity, but obviously it is completely voluntary.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Nathan. Just to add one piece on that before I pass over to Josh, it will be up to obviously the participants to make that decision themselves. If there's a reason why you don't want them as parents, if you don't want them to be a part of that, then please make sure you both share that with FZY over the next few weeks, and also share that with your teen, because we don't want us at the time to say, I'm sorry, you know, you can't take part because your parents don't want you to, and without them having known that in advance. So just make sure you communicate that with us. And the more information of all of that process, what Nathan just said, is in the information guide, which we sent to you earlier this week. Let me pass over to Josh again, who's going to share a little bit about the flights.
Right, yeah, thanks, Joel. So I wanted to talk a little bit about extending your stay in Israel, and a decision that we took earlier on in the year, and a little bit about the reasons why we did it, and then moving forward a little bit. So when things were quite up in the air in terms of entry, and you know, that Israel, there was still a threat at the time, like I talked about earlier, at the time when the threat of maybe Israel shutting its borders, or you know, vaccination processes changing and higher rates of COVID-19 and it being more serious, we took the decision to not do flights, allow for flight deviations this year. Since then, clearly, as was stated before, things became less strict, and I want to explain the process that we then went through. We tried to negotiate with El Al that they were willing kind of to allow this to happen, so that anybody going on Israel tour could deviate their flight. They weren't able to do so. However, we still stand by our decision that this is still something that we wouldn't like to happen en masse, because we still don't know. Like I mentioned before, you could still test positive and at the last minute have to deviate your flight in Israel. And we may have hundreds of people that might have to do this at the last minute. And if they've already deviated their flight at that point, it's really challenging in order to then get the required flights back home. So that was the reason behind doing it. And we definitely did our utmost in order to change the process. We still stand by it. We still stand by our decision. And then that's just a little point on that one. If you have any further questions or would like a conversation about the rationale moving forward, any potential loopholes which may or may not exist, ways in which we can work our way forward together, please email me. I will be as open and honest and let you know the situation as I can. However, I know that many of you will have already booked a return flight home because you were aware of this, that we weren't doing flight deviations. Please, if you have booked this and you haven't let FZY know, please communicate with FZY and they will send you a waiver for you to fill out that basically says, I'm not gonna take the return flight home, and I'm gonna, at Ben Gurion Airport or wherever, I'm gonna hand the care of my teen to X person. So please communicate with them. I appreciate that it is a change from previous years, and many of you, some of you didn't know, some of you did know. Please email me and I will absolutely have a conversation with you about it, and we can find a way forward if possible. So thank you.
Thank you, Josh. So I'm going to finish off with a few bits of information, and then one of my colleagues, Ron, I think, is filtering through some questions through, and we'll try and answer other questions that you may have. Insurance, travel insurance. We mentioned about health insurance. Travel insurance is also, travel and baggage insurance is also included within the program. That, again, more information of exactly what is covered and what isn't was in the information guide. So it's important that you do read that in terms of exactly what is covered. But one thing that I want to pick up on in terms of travel insurance is about lost items. And this is regardless of whether you use our travel insurance or whether you choose to take out additional policies because you want to, additional cover in certain things, because there are obviously limits for every, for every eventuality, which we believe are thorough, and we believe are, should cover most eventualities, most foreseen eventualities, but you may want to take out something separate. But in terms of like insurance, if something gets lost or stolen, insurance companies generally require a police report to have been filed within 24 hours. FZY and Talim, who obviously operating the program on the ground, like we'll do our utmost to do that, but we can absolutely not offer any guarantees that we are going to be able to manage that. Depending on where the group is in the country, depending on what their schedule is next, depending on so many different factors, will be whether we are able to actually get a participant through to a police station within the required 24-hour limit, and which would allow for insurance to cover. So one of the things that we stress and we do ask is please don't this isn't really probably the place to be packing valuables. Participants don't need laptops. Participants don't need expensive jewelry or other expensive equipment or clothing or anything like that. So just be aware and think of that as well whilst packing. But as I said, we will try and do everything we can at our utmost to be able to, and so that things can be covered on insurance if that eventuality does happen. Laundry, like for the year 11 program, it's it's just over a 3-week program. For a year 12 program, it's just over a 2-week program. We recognize that it may not be that easy to be able to pack it, and not easy and also not practical to be able to pack enough clothes for the entirety of the time. So there will be at least one opportunity, possibly 2 opportunities throughout the Israel tour where participants will be able to do laundry. That will be a small extra expense for those participants which want to do that. What will happen is an organization will come and will meet the group at a youth hostel where they're staying. And the madrachim will help and collect in everything that all of the laundry that is that participants want, and the next day that will be returned fully cleaned. So there is that opportunity to do laundry when in Israel. I want to actually say, which is linked to laundry, or at least to the packing and other things like that. There are outlined again on the information guide. Pretty much all the information we're saying tonight is in the information guide. But that one of the things that is about packing. Like we're asking people to bring but to have 3 different size bags, of which 2 of them that you will bring from the UK and 1 that we will be providing in Israel. One is like a larger suitcase, larger bag. We recommend that is a soft case, not a hard case. It's easier for the participants. It's easier for the packing of the buses because when they're traveling a lot around the country and putting, 45 plus suitcases on a bus is it's much easier when it's a soft case. So we ask to do that, and we also suggest, strongly recommend that it has wheels as well. It will make it easier for the teens themselves when they'll be the ones who will be required to move their suitcases from the bus to their room in the hostel and vice versa. And the second bag that we talk about that we ask to bring is kind of a bag which we recommend something around the size of like 45 liters, which will a backpack around 45 liters, which will be their hand luggage on the flight. We ask, and we really strongly recommend, please don't bring in like small wheelie suitcases. They're not, it's not very practical for Israel tour. B, it's much more challenging when it comes to packing the buses, as we said. They will require something like that. And the reason why we want a bag like that, like a large backpack like that, is that there will be times, for example, when Aaron mentioned before, like the Bedouin experience or the desert experience, or some other times where, or Maccabea, where they'll be going to a place just for one night, and they may not be taking their whole suitcase with them. And so we're asked them to pack like 1 day's worth of, change of clothes and toiletries and certain things in there. And so that's the best way to do it, is to bring as hand luggage something around a 45-liter backpack. The third piece of luggage is something that we will be providing the participants in Israel, which will be like a day bag, where they'll be able to put in things like their water and some money and some snack or whatever it is that they want, which will suffice for the day. So that's a little bit about laundry and about packing and those types of bags as well. In terms of just, and I know that I just having seen a few questions that come up while we're talking about packing in terms of like limits of like how much you're allowed to bring. Allow has it's a 23 kilo weight restriction. I believe it is. is first for allow for under on the hold, and it's 8 kilos is the maximum in terms of the hand luggage. So just be aware of that. You can go and check out the LL website. All the information is on the LL website as to, you know, the maximum sizes as well of cases and all of these different types of things. So just to make sure like the links to that are in the information guide. More information is that there, but just be aware of that. So we don't want to be in a situation where people are bringing like are overweight and need to, you know, pay for that on the spot, or have to, like, you know, dump clothes or whatever that is, or the hand luggage not being allowed onto the plane because it's too big or weighs too much. So please do like pay attention to that. I want to say something on water bottles. Like we recommend actually, we mandate at times when they're going on certain the hikes that they have like 3 liters of water with them. We mentioned before, it's you know, it's exceptionally hot in Israel, and we need to make sure that they have enough water which will last them through. That doesn't necessarily require that they need a 3-liter water bottle. That could be that they'll you'll take 2 1.5-liter water bottles, or a 2-liter water bottle, and they'll, you know, buy a mineral water, you know, smaller bottle there as well. So don't feel like you need to go out and buy a 3-liter water bottle specifically, but there will be several times throughout the summer they will be required to bring 3 liters of water with them. So think that through as to what is the best way, most convenient way for you, in order to be able to, for you and your participant, in order to be able to manage that request. Mobile phones. So mobile phones are, I want to explain now that like our process of mobile phones. Mobile phones are allowed on Israel Tour. People can bring mobile phones on Israel Tour, but there are like a lot of like restrictions which are put in place. Like number one, we want our participants not to be spending their time looking at their phone. We want them to be looking at the country which you know they're going to and are spending, like you know their summer in, and it will be a huge shame should the participants come back, even you know in coach journeys, that they're not looking out the window and seeing the you know, the desert views or the beautiful like Carmel mountain views in the north, or all these other things. So we do try and put restrictions in place. Number one, in terms of mobile phones, is like whenever there's activities going on, there's absolutely no using the phone. And when I talk about activities, that also includes meal times, that includes guided tours, that includes like all of the like everything. Whenever a madrich, one of the tour guides, or whoever that we're meeting with is speaking to them as a group, like they're not, you know, mobile phones absolutely need to be away outside of that. We recognize that some people now use mobile phones for as a camera, and we recognize that, and we'll make sure when we're at certain sites we will say, you know, here's time you can take out, if you'll use your mobile phone as a camera, here's a time that you can take it out to take some pictures. But we don't want when a participant, when a tour guide is speaking to them, for them to be on their phone and taking pictures at that point. It's just not the right environment that we want to create. A lot of like in terms of like SIM cards and certain things like that, most people nowadays often find that the provider, the UK mobile phone provider, you know, can offer the best deals in terms of you know, a package for Israel. If not, like there are different companies you could work for. And the one that we would probably most recommend is 019 mobile phones. They're based in the airport, and it's something which they could pick up a SIM on their way to the bus at the first time. But like those types of things, like find out more information about that in the information guide. About all of that. But as I said, that if there are participants who can't stick to those rules, there are participants who are using their phones at times which are like at times when they shouldn't be, or using their phones inappropriately, like we will confiscate the phones, and we want to make that clear, and we'll make that clear to the participants as well. And we want to try and create an environment where the phones aren't going to interrupt the program that we're doing, and aren't going to be a cause of disruption, and they're going to be there for, you know, for positive use. Spending money. In terms of spending money, like we recommend somewhere in the region of 150 to 200 pounds, but really it's very personal. Like the program includes the program price includes everything, includes the accommodation, the activities, the foods, includes, you know, everything as part of it. What it doesn't include is, for example, there'll be, you know, a couple of times throughout the program where there may be free time in Jerusalem or Tel Aviv or Eilat, where participants may want to, you know, buy a gift for their lovely you know, families back home to say thank you for taking me on to, you know, allow me to go on the program. So for things like gifts, or maybe on a day where, you know, we'll stop at a service station, maybe a participant wants to buy an ice cream or something like that. For those types of things, they would need spending money for. But outside of that, the program, so outside of gifts and outside of like those snacks and things like that they may want in between meals in a day, and outside of laundry, there isn't really like a necessity for spending money. So we do recommend a small amount. Ideally, maybe bring some in shekels, because I don't know when they'll be able to immediately get access to some of the money. And within the information guide, there's a little bit more information about things like Caxton Cards and Monzo and some of these other companies which make it so you don't necessarily have to just send cash, and then it's maybe a safer way for your teens to have money in Israel without actually holding cash the whole time. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to stop sharing that, and I know that there've been several questions which have been asked, both prior to the information evening and also during. So we're going to do it. There are going to be certain points where I'm just going to call on maybe some of my colleagues to answer some of those questions. So in terms of, I think I'm just looking through here, most of these ones I think have been answered on this one here. In terms of, okay, do tour groups mix in the summer? Aaron, you haven't spoken quite as much. Maybe I can pass that over to you.
Yeah, so the times where groups do meet each other are either on Shabbat, where usually there are 2 to 3 groups together in the same accommodation. And then what I alluded to earlier with the Maccabea, that's the one time where all 10 groups meet together and will spend, you know, a 24-hour period together. But other than that, it's 2 to 3 groups. Again, it could be that they'll bump into their groups which are in the same country. They might be leaving one hike as another group is entering. But in terms of organized meetings, it's Shabbat and the Maccabea.
Thank you, Aaron. I'm actually going to give you 2 more questions to answer whilst you're speaking. Number one was about the hikes themselves. Like how difficult are the hikes? And number 2, in terms of like and rooming, like how many people like share a room during the program?
Okay. I'll answer the second question first because that's easier to answer. With regards to how many in a room, so it varies from 3 in hotels. So when the groups you'll see mostly in Jerusalem are staying in hotels, that's rooms of 3. And when the vast majority of the time where they're staying in hostels, it's either 4 or 5, maximum of 5 to a room. That obviously is apart from the desert experience and the Bedouin experience, where in the Bedouin experience, if we're already talking about it, there are showers and all facilities available, whereas in the desert experience, there is not. But in both of those times, there will be like sleeping together as a group with separate areas for boys and girls.
Thanks. And the question about the hikes and how difficult they are?
Yes, I wasn't avoiding it. Most of the hikes that we do are, I didn't mention when we talked about Telalim at the beginning, Telalim also works with Israeli schools and youth movements, but with 270 Israeli schools and a variety of different Israeli youth movements. And for the hikes that we do with the groups from abroad and for FZY, for example, are generally hikes that we do for slightly younger children in Israel who are, you know, maybe more used to hiking in Israel. So I'd say stuff that we do with maybe, you know, the equivalent of year 6 or 7 in Israel is what we do for year 11 or 12 from English people. Not to say that they're not able to do more, but that's what we felt that is the correct level. So there shouldn't be anything which is too challenging. But if that was to be the case, you know, we take it as we go along. Obviously, there's only 4. There's 4 staff members per group, so we don't want staff having to stay behind with participants who can't take part in hikes. but we are very alert to the abilities of the participants on the program. And if there are ones who feel that hikes are too challenging, then we will try to facilitate them.
Fantastic. I'm going to give you one more question about hikes whilst you're speaking about them. Like, are hiking boots a necessity, or will like a trainers suffice for the types of hikes that we're doing?
Yeah, the guideline, like when we talked about the Cheder Matzav, the situation room, the guideline for and which the tour guides is their main responsibility to enforce these things are closed shoes. So even if there are hikes which are designated as water hikes and there's water available to go into, they will need either take off shoes or have an alternative pair of shoes to go into the water. But for the walking elements of the hike, you will need closed shoes, not necessarily hiking boots, but closed shoes, which can be trainers or others.
Fantastic. Thank you, Aaron. A couple of questions that I'll just field quickly now. So it's quite a question about like year 12 and participating in Maccabea. So the year 12 groups will not. We have, just so people are aware, we have 10 year 11 groups, which are coming out between the 10th and 13th of July to the 2nd and 4th of August. And we have 2 year 12 groups, which are coming out, if I remember correctly, on the 8th of August to the 8th to the 24th of August. So the Maccabea will be just for the year 11 groups. And for the year 12 groups, there won't be, but the year 12 groups, there are two groups. They'll be spending a lot more because there are only 2 groups. There will be together a lot more than the year 11 groups will be together based on that. But there will be other programming and other things that we'll be providing for them. The year 12 program is generally a slightly shortened version of the year 11. All of the major things and the major sites and seeing the majority of Israel will be seen, but they'll just be spending a little bit less time in some of those areas. So year 12 won't be going to the Maccabea. I think there's a last couple of questions now, which we're just answering in terms of like how long before the flight do we meet at the airport. So I'm going to pass over, especially as my video is having some real problems again at the moment. I'm passing over to Nathan, who can hopefully answer that one.
Yeah, so definitely. So when it comes to meeting before tour, all of this information can be found in the information guide, but we're meeting approximately 6 hours before the flight, and not at the airport, but at Kenton Synagogue, which is opposite our new office. So we do that for a few reasons. So 6 hours is a long time, but it's to make sure that everyone has brought everything that they need. It's amazing, but people do still forget to bring things like passports. So it gives us enough time to make sure everyone's got all of that stuff, to make sure everyone's there, and to give out things like T-shirts so we can recognize them as a group and then take them to the airport in a coach. For people from outside of London, there is travel provided from the north and from Leeds and North Manchester and South Manchester. And for those of you in other locations, we've been in touch to arrange transport as well.
Brilliant, thank you. I think, if I'm correct, that most of, if not all of the questions have been answered. And what I would say is this: is like if you have more questions, if there are things that you would like to know that we haven't shared this evening, I'd suggest 2 things. Number one, read the information guide that we sent you earlier this week. We hope that all of the information that you require is in that. But if for any reason it's not, then what we ask you to do is to be in contact with us. Ruth, who is on the call, is like the main port of call for most of the questions. But as you can see from here, there's a wide range of staff, both in FZY, UJ, Israel Experience, Talim, and elsewhere, who can make sure we get the information to you. So if you haven't yet got the answer that you want, read the information guide at first port of call, and then number 2, if you haven't got, if you don't find it within that, please do reach out to us. There will be other information coming to you at various points over the next few weeks as we lead up to Israel tour. Things like Nathan mentioned before in terms of the emergency phone number and some other pieces of information. As we get closer, there'll be more information will be coming out. But hopefully we've now set you up in a way that your understanding of at least the majority of what you need to know and what will be going on this summer. So what I'd like to say, firstly, thank you. I know that we've had I think solidly more than 350 people watching this evening and being a part of this. So number one, thank you for watching and for being a part of it. For those of you who maybe aren't watching live and are watching it re-live, we will be sending out the the link where people can watch this re-live. And for those which were on here, so you can go back and look as well to pick up other information that maybe you missed or if you joined late. So we'll be sending that out in the next couple of days as well. And I just want to, my last thing I want to say really is just thank you to you all. Thank you for trusting FZY, Talim, UJ as our experience for what will undoubtedly be like a really, really unbelievable summer. As someone who has seen Israel, as someone who has both been a participant of Israel Tour and a madrich of Israel Tour, and has been in both the position I'm in now as executive director, but also in several other roles in FZY over the last quarter of a century. Like I really know how much the Israel Tour program has such a positive impact on the participants that come, that it's really such a great incredible experience for them. And so thank you for trusting us. And I really look forward to, over the next few months, like the conversations we'll have, maybe not necessarily in this forum. And as someone who lives in Israel, I very much look forward to seeing the teams as they come out and watching firsthand their experience. So thank you to you all. We're going to wish you good night now, and you know where we are if you have any other questions and want to contact us. So thank you all. Okay, I believe we're